So I'm Lindsay Whitley. I'm the director of Guilford Parent Academy, a department of Guilford County Schools. And our goal is to help parents help students succeed. We know that when parents are involved in the educational process, everything from homework help to college admissions decisions, that our students are the beneficiaries and they do better. And so we applaud you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know that there are so many competing events going on tonight, so we're glad that you chose to be here with us. This is part 4 of our college planning series, so it is our last series, but we've heard such great things that we do want to see if we can get some more scheduled for 2018, but this is the last session of our 4-part series. Tonight, we're happy to have a special guest with us. We have Mychal Wynn. He's one of the most preeminent and highly sought after speakers in the country. His writings and presentations are based on experiences gleaned over the course of 30 years of parenting and teaching. A child of poverty and first in his family to graduate from college, Mr. Wynn has unparalleled insight into the issues and obstacles confronting students from high poverty and marginalized communities. However, such students are not the only students challenged with navigating preschool through high school pathways into college. Many students fail to maximize the preschool through high school opportunities to take the right classes, earn the right grades, and achieve the right test scores needed to pave the way to full scholarships. Most students will fail to identify their hook and fail to match to the right college. Indeed, most students require guidance, support, encouragement, and inspiration. So Mr. Wynn has worked with students elementary through community college, juvenile court schools, and alternative schools. He has also worked with elementary through college faculty and administrators. He has worked with parents from lower income to affluent communities. He has worked with schools, school districts, faith-based, and community organizations, and with policy makers. He's done everything. In essence, Mr. Wynn has worked with every stakeholder group concerned with increasing student achievement and supporting student success. And tonight, we're just excited to have someone of his caliber here with us. And will you just help me give a warm welcome to Mr. Mychal Wynn?
I want to give you a sense of each component of this college planning, college admissions process. So hopefully, when you leave, if you're a student, you will have a better understanding of what you're going to need to do. If you're a parent, you will have a much deeper understanding of the competition and the complexities in this process. First, for the students and the parents, whenever you begin to identify colleges and universities that you wish to apply to, you have to understand the competition. In the work that we do each year with students, oftentimes they start the process with a group of colleges on their list, and they really don't know how competitive it's going to be to get into those types of colleges and universities, or where the competition is. Competition begins first in your school. As a matter of fact, when you look at highly selective colleges and universities, oftentimes they will not admit or offer admission to more than 2 students from any particular public or private school. In rare cases, more students may be offered admission. My wife and I were speaking with an admission counselor at Williams College last year, and we understood that they offered admission to a larger group of students from a particular high school, but typically 1, maybe 2 students from any given high school. Students are then competing against the students in their state for admission into particular colleges and universities. State universities, of course, they are competing against all of the students in North Carolina to get into North Carolina universities, but then when they begin to look outside of North Carolina, now they're competing with all of the students throughout the country trying to get in a particular college or university, international applicants, and then their demographic group. When you look at the demographics of any college and university, you're going to see percentages. Well, within those percentages, they typically remain the same over time. Why is that? Well, that's because within those demographic groups, there's a certain number of students who are going to be admitted into the freshman class. Then you're competing against students who are trying to pursue your particular major. Then you're competing against students who may have your gifts and talents. Athletes are really familiar with this. If you're a running back and you're trying to get in a particular college or university, and there are 5 other running backs your caliber in the United States, and the coach only needs one, guess what? He's looking for that one. If you're a student and you have high grades and high ACT scores or SAT scores, you may look really good in your school, but then when you compare yourself to students nationally and internationally, their gifts and talents in academics are being compared against your gifts and talents in academics. So it's all of these different levels that you have to consider as you're looking at how you compete. And here are the numbers. I mean, these numbers are daunting. When you talk about 25,000 public high schools in the United States, all of those schools are going to graduate a number 1 and number 2 student. That's 50,000 valedictorians, salutatorians in the pool of applicants, even before everyone else. So if you graduate number 1 in your school, that means that you're better than everyone else in your school. But you're now being compared against the number 1 in 25,000 public high schools, not to mention charter schools, Catholic schools, and private schools. Every year, it's about 3.3 million students who graduate from high school. 1.5 million are trying to go get into 4-year colleges and universities. 8 out of 10 need financial aid. And all those students are trying to get into less than 3,000 colleges and universities. That's a huge amount of competition. So for any student who's in the room tonight, if you're in the 9th grade, that means that you have 4 years of high school to prepare for this competition. Unfortunately, what we see every year is that many students don't really give serious thought to it until 12th grade. At 12th grade, you can't go backwards to become more competitive. So this is what I want you to think about. And I have some video clips that I want to frame all the conversation that I want to have with you this evening. This first clip is a clip about rejection. And my wife and I are working with students throughout the country. This time, these are high school seniors now who are applying to colleges. And then over the coming months, a lot of them are going to experience rejection. So this student talks about her rejection, but I want you to listen to what she doesn't say about her planning. I can't imagine what her college essay sounded like. You know, she sort of talked about her experiences in her life, and we learned about all the things that she hated and she didn't like, and she has this overall analysis that in itself is flawed. Here's the reality of the schools that she applied to. Berry College, the college that she says it was her safe school, they let everybody in. Well, they do have a high admission rate of 60%. But of all the schools that she applied to, they're actually ranked higher than all the other schools. Berry College is ranked number 1 in regional universities. Boston College, with a 32% acceptance rate, is ranked number 2 in national. Pepperdine, a 37% acceptance rate, is ranked number 46 in national. UConn, 53% acceptance, 56 among national universities. Fordham, 47% acceptance, 61 among national universities. UC Santa Cruz, in her home state of California, which she made clear she did not want to go to school, almost a 60% acceptance rate, the same as Berry College, and 81 in national universities. Here's the point about her analysis, is that she doesn't talk about having engaged in any real research. She doesn't talk about having packaged herself or prepared herself. It was just sort of, hey, I'm going to apply. The reason this clip is so important is that this is what we see every year. We see students who are rushing to get their applications in the mail. They need to apply. They need to apply. Everyone goes to school as a senior. I just applied here, I just applied there. And there's a huge amount of money that's spent on applications to schools that, one, even if you were accepted to, your parents couldn't afford, and two, that you don't stand a good chance of being accepted to. So I want to clarify this for everyone in the room. What happens when you actually apply to college? It's important that young people understand the room where decisions are being made about your future. I want to take these 3 schools, because the schools that she listed, these are schools that are ranked high. They're not ranked low. They're not ranked at the top. So I'm going to take these 3 schools. Williams College, the number 1 ranked liberal arts college in the United States. Amherst, the number 2 rank. And Bowdoin, the number 3 rank. And for the students and the parents, one question that's going to come up later is, well, Mr. Wynn, which admission cycle should you apply to? Well, this is information that you should discover through your research. And if you look at these 3 schools, you'll see that at Williams College, only 17% of the applicants are accepted in the regular decision pool, as opposed to 41% of the applicants' early decision. Well, what that means is if you accept 41% of your class who applied early decision, then there's only 60% of the class left to fill. And when you have a huge number of applicants for that 60%, the admission rate goes way down. Amherst College, which is where our oldest son graduated from, 14% regular decision, 40% early decision, and then Bowdoin, 14.9% regular decision, 27% early decision. So here is what it looks like. When she got a decline, rejected from all of those schools, here is how it happened. So here's what's happening. Every student who is now being considered, they started out with over 9,000 applicants. They've narrowed that pool down to 1,000. The freshman class is going to be about 472 students. So the students who are now being considered in this room, their body of work is on the table. Their essay or resume, there's activities, leadership, test scores, grades, AP exam scores, classes, recommendation letters from teachers. All of this is now on this table where this handful of people are making decisions that will impact your life for a long time into the future. The real question about this process is, what will you look like when you're in that room on the table? And for far too many students, they rush through the application process. They look at the application process as the game. The application process is not the game. How you prepare to be in that room is the game. That means that the essay that you write, we have it all the time, high school seniors who want to write an essay in a week. To craft an essay that tells your story about a family situation or what you've overcome, obstacle that you've overcome, that essay can take 3 months to develop, word by word, line by line. But that essay has to be connected to what you're doing in your school or what you've done. Most students don't want to have anything. Most students will put 4 years into high school and don't want to put 40 minutes into their college application. That's insanity. So I want you to understand what goes on in the room so that you can be prepared. I want to play a clip that will tell a very different story about this same room. Now, I did want to point this out. I took this from a news article where a family in New York whose daughter was already highly accomplished, they paid a college planning consultant $10,000 to prepare her package for that room, for Amherst College. So what I want everyone to understand is that if there are students who have that level of support to try to position themselves to be admitted into these colleges, then it really is important that you utilize all of your resources so that you can compete with these types of students who have those types of resources to prepare that package for their room. Here's a Guilford County student. I want you to listen to her story. So I wanted to play that clip for you because my wife and I were in South Carolina when Brenna sent us an email last week with this link to this YouTube video that she and her mom made because we were in the hotel room crying. And I set up these clips because I want to give you a sense of just the work as I lay out everything that all the students in the room need to do. You saw the first clip. Students say, I got rejected, I got rejected, I got rejected. You saw the admissions room where decisions are being made at the number 2 ranked liberal arts college in the United States. And then Brenna, one of the students from Guilford County, who we met in January last year, who we then worked with 1 day a month. She's still in the current cohort as a current senior who was accepted into Amherst College. So if there are any juniors in the room who want to become part of the college planning cohort and begin in the fall at a summer boot camp, you just simply need to contact the Parent Academy office and they will put you in contact with the right people. What happens is that my wife and I are here one Saturday a month and we're over at Guilford Technical Community College and juniors and seniors are in the computer lab and they're working through all the activities that I'm going to talk about tonight. So the college research, all of the research part of this process is critical. It is critical for every student to identify the group of schools that you are best matched to, and that takes time. It is not as simply as saying, my dad went to A&T, or my mom went to Duke, or I have a cousin that went to Appalachian State. It is not that simple. It really requires research and identifying the group of schools that you match to for your dreams, your aspirations, your hopes, the activities, what you want to learn, what you want to do, what type of program you want to be in. And then from there are several websites that I'm going to give you that you can begin to engage in research. This first website is collegeresults.org. This website is sponsored by the nonprofit Education Trust. The reason I personally like collegeresults.org is that you can create a group of colleges and identify them and research them, but also you can take any one college from that group, and there's another tab that you can click on that says similar colleges, and that will bring up colleges that are similar to that particular college or university. When you look at the schools that I've put on this list that are in North Carolina, the higher the graduation rate, the more the selectivity. It simply is the way it is. Because the graduation rate becomes higher because they are only allowing or admitting the most accomplished students in the country. Any student can be successful at any college if they identify the right college match. So as a student is 90% likely to graduate on time at Duke, and only 45% likely to graduate on time at Winston-Salem State, there are students at Winston-Salem State that receive their degrees in 4 years and go on to the best graduate schools in the program, just like students at Duke. But if you're a student who goes to Duke and it's not the right match, then rather than being in a 94% that graduates on time, you could be in that 6% that doesn't. Or if you go to Winston-Salem State and you identified the right match, then you're going to be in that 45% that graduates on time. But all of that comes from sustained, prolonged research. Another website I particularly like is collegedata.com. And College Data, it allows you to pull up the statistics for each of the schools that you're interested in, and you can sort of look at them as a snapshot in terms of how you match. Now, what I want to say to parents is this, for those of you who have ninth graders, is that if a ninth grader tells me today where they want to go to school 4 years from now we have the context for a conversation throughout 4 years of high school. If you say as a ninth grader, here's a college I want to go to, then we get to say, what's going to be the plan that gets you there? You can't tell me, I'll give you this as an example. We have a young man now we're working with who's a ninth grader. He's only been in high school 1 semester. His top list is Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. He said, that's where I want to go to school. So far in the first semester, he has 2 A's, 2 B's, and 3 C's. So I had a conversation with him. I took him to this page for each of those schools. And I asked him, what type of GPA do the students have who get accepted, offered admission to those schools? What type of test scores do they have, students who are offered admission to those schools? And once he looked at it, I said, now you have a choice. You can either change how you're approaching school, or you can change your list. Tell me which one you want to do. He said he would change how he was approaching school, and he brought all of his grades up to A. Oftentimes, the only thing we were really talking about is attitude. You know, if you want to work harder, then work harder. If there's some place that you want to be, some place you want to go, an opportunity that you want for yourself, then it simply is identifying what you need to do. The collegegreenlight.com, we're a community-based partner with College Greenlight, and this is what it looks like on their website. The thing I like about College Greenlight is that you have to set up an account, and then once you set up an account and you create your profile, then you are automatically matched to colleges and to scholarships based upon your profile. Your grades and your test scores change, you're matched to different colleges. Your activities and your leadership and your community service changes, then you're matched to different scholarship and grant opportunities. Eventually, as a high school senior, this is a type of sheet that you're going to have to create. As a high school senior, you're going to have to identify the schools that you match to. And for this particular student, 4.0 GPA, 32 on the ACT, the student is well matched to some of the most selective colleges in the United States: Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Princeton, Penn, and Yale, all 8 of the Ivy League. But a student who has lower grades and lower test scores. Question is, well, Mr. Wynn, should that student just give up? Does it mean that student can't get in? Of course not. Because all 8 of the Ivy League schools have athletic programs, do they not? They all need athletes for their programs, do they not? They all need athletes for the practice teams for their programs, do they not? And what do we know about athletics at the collegiate level? We know that there are athletes that have grades and test scores that are lower than the general pool. Do we not know that? But does a college or university only need an athlete? If they have an orchestra, maybe they need a cellist, or a pianist. If they have an a cappella, maybe they need a new voice. If they have a martial arts program, if they have a fencing team. What you get to decide as a high school student is you get to decide, where am I going to develop my gifts and talents? Now, I will give you an example from one of our students in Georgia. She is one of the only African-American fencers in the state of Georgia. There are a lot of African-Americans who run the 100 meters, who run the 400 meters. There are a lot of African-Americans who are playing basketball. She may apply to an Ivy League school and be the only African-American in the pool of applicants who is a fencer. And if she has competitive grades and test scores, and if Harvard needs another fencer, and they've never had an African-American fencer, what do you think is being said about her in that room as they're talking about students and talking about what they're involved in? What I want all the students in the room to understand is that you get to decide. You get to decide the student that you want to become. Now, for those of you who are going to school and you're saying, I only want to be an athlete. I don't want to pay attention to grades and classes and test scores. I only want to be an athlete. You must be the best athlete on your team, and then the best athlete in your district, and then the best athlete in your state, or else you're not at the top of that elite pool. And if you're not at the top of the elite pool, why would you put all of your eggs in one basket? Why not be a good athlete and a great student? And for anyone in the room who does not understand this one point, I'm going to say it very slowly. Grades and test scores are the most direct pathway to a full college scholarship. No matter what your gift, what your talent, grades and test scores are the most direct pathway. And if you don't believe me, all that you have to do is to go to the websites of many colleges and universities. And it says right on the website, if you have one of our students now was offered the full presidential scholarship to Tuskegee University. But it says right on the website, if you have a 3.5 GPA and a 30 on the ACT, you are entitled to receive the presidential scholarship. And it's that way on many colleges and university websites. All that you're really going to need to do is the research. You heard Brenna mention the common data set. So for students who leave the room, students are always talking to other students. That's where they get much of their information from. They say, well, I heard Mr. Wynn say, oh, don't worry about what Mr. Wynn said. What the only thing you need to do is, oh, I know someone that got accepted. You can go to the common data set that every college, major college and university publishes, and it tells you what they view as being important in their pool of applicants. Here's the common data set from UNC Chapel Hill. Very important, the rigor of your record. Very important, your test scores. Very important, your essay. Very important, your recommendation. Right now, we're having a huge problem with many high school seniors who are rushing to put their applications in the mail or to hit send with their applications, that they simply rushed and found any 2 teachers they could in their high school to write a recommendation. You heard in the admission room how they read all of this. If you're applying to a competitive program, you want recommendation letters that speak to you and your passions, your leadership and your service, people who know you. So the time to identify the teachers to write your recommendation letters is not as a high school senior, it's as you're going through high school. You have a 9th or a 10th or 11th grade teacher that you're connected to, who sees you as being a brilliant student. That's the teacher you go to. But again, it's clear. They say your extracurricular activities, your talent, your character, and the fact that you're from North Carolina. All of those are in the most important column. And what I'm saying to you is that as you begin to identify your group of schools, identify what they want and then be that student. It also talks about, these are the test scores. When students say to me, Mr. Wynn, test scores aren't everything. There are colleges that are test optional, and then there are colleges that require test scores. So what that means is that if UNC Chapel Hill shows us that the range on the ACT is from 27 to 32, and your test scores are lower than the 27, then that means they have to find something so uniquely special about you that they're willing to offer you admission. What I'm saying to you is that if you don't have something uniquely special about you, then you need to focus on getting the test scores that you need to meet the mark for the schools that you want to apply to. And the time to do that, let me make sure everyone understands the timeline if you're not a high school senior. If you are in grades 9 through 11, you should take the SAT and or the ACT. You decide which one, but you commit to one or the other. You take it by January, February of your junior year. You can wait until the state issued test if you want. But once you take that test and you get those scores, you decide whether or not those scores meet the benchmark for the colleges you're trying to get into. And if they don't meet the benchmark, then what you do is you commit yourself to test prep for that one test, not both, either the SAT or the ACT. You choose. You choose that test, you commit to the prep, and you retake that test by June at the end of your junior year. And those are the scores that you run with. Because there will be all sorts of applications over the summer to diversity weekends and to putting yourself on the radar of these colleges and universities. And if you are still trying to raise a test score, then you can't commit the amount of time that's needed to all of the other areas, all of the other pieces to the puzzle. And if you start your senior year still trying to raise your test scores, you don't even know what colleges you are a strong candidate for. And we see it every year. So if you do that timeline, then you'll be in a good place. Now, for anyone who would say, well, Mr. Wynn, you don't understand, I'm involved in all of these activities in school, you need to check yourself. You need to have, colleges are no longer looking for a student who's involved in 12 activities. They're looking for students who are involved passionately in a small number of activities. So if you're an athlete, be a passionate athlete. Donate your time to community service by serving as a youth coach or assistant coach in your sport. Work with a middle and elementary school with other athletes. Focus your energy and your attention. If you're going into medicine, do an internship in the summer. Make sure you're involved in medical organizations at your high school. Focus your time, but don't try to be in 9 or 10 different activities and not have any time to devote to college planning. That is critically important part of the process. And then fit. I mean, at the end of the day, really, this is what we're talking about. And parents and students, we have to be on the same page. When we're talking about fit, there are colleges that young people want, but they may not be the colleges that parents can afford. There has to be compromise. And when you're talking about fit, it has to be, is it a large institution or a small institution? One of the things that happened with Brenna is that she applied to diversity weekends, and she was offered an all expenses paid visit to Amherst College. And then she went up to Amherst College for that one visit, all expenses paid. And she told me about walking across the lawn with one of the admissions officers, talking about Amherst. She said she came back, she knew exactly where she wanted to go to college. She knew that if she could get accepted there, that they were going to give her the financial aid that she needed. And she came back and she went all in. She applied early decision. So when her application was in that room, there were people in that room that knew her. And there were people in that room whose voices could speak for her. And so all of this is part of building relationships with the colleges and universities that you want to attend. If you've already identified your schools, you should already be on their mailing list. You should have already sent them an email. You should have already requested a view book. You should have already visited their campus. You should have already started to build a relationship with different people there. You should know about their programs. You should never apply to a college that you don't know what the mission of the school is. I mean, when you write your essay has to be focused on why you fit that school, because you got to understand the relationship. The college is saying, in order for me to offer you a seat in my freshman class, what are you bringing me? What are you going to give me? What are you going to bring to my campus? And so you need to be able to answer that question through your application and in your essay. Institutional grants and scholarships, again, this goes to fit. If you have a unique gift or talent, then you should be positioning yourself now for the colleges and universities that will reward that gift or that talent in money, so that reduces your overall cost of college. And the way that you do it, as I've outlined here in the bullets, is you got to start your research. You should have a binder or a portfolio, and you should be gathering this information, if you're in 9th grade, throughout high school. Here's an example of the Davidson website. On the Davidson website, it talks about the institutional grants and the scholarships. Now, here's what's important. And again, the reason I'm talking about 9th through 12th is that if you're in 9th, 10th, or 11th, that means you get to identify a scholarship now that you want. And then you can work to be the student who is awarded that scholarship when you apply. So you're not going to be applying cold. You've identified the scholarship now. You're working to make yourself the student that they want to award that scholarship to. So when you apply, you're going to have an advantage in the process. You should identify a college planning support program. Whether you join the college planning cohort here in Guilford County, or you find a local program from a nonprofit or YMCA, you need to put together a team. You need someone who's going to review your essays, someone who's going to guide your college research, someone who's going to engage you in authentic conversations, someone who's going to talk to you about the different pieces. You need a team. And if you have a team at your church, or you have a team in your school, or if you have a team of just other families, you're going to have to identify it. Here's an example of the importance of what I'm talking about. So this particular program is called LEADA for students in grades 9 through 11. This is the month for you to begin your research for what you're going to do next summer. Now you should research the summer programs that you want to attend, whether they're college planning programs or they're summer programs in STEM or whatever your passions are. Because many of these programs, the applications will open up January 1st, and for some of them, the application will close by February 15th. For many families, the summer planning is deferred until May, near the end of the school year. But these programs that are highly competitive, you need to have them identified on your radar and prepared to apply with your recommendation letters and your resume right after the first of the year. So see, the college planning, there is no break. There's no holiday break. School is over and you go home and you kick back and say, man, I'm play some video games and I'm going to chill. This is not the time to chill. This is the time to do the research because your head, it's cloudy throughout the school year. You have homework, you have activities, but now that you have time to exhale is the time to really embrace the opportunity to engage in college planning. You need to identify the colleges where you fit. Some of the important programs, you heard Brenna mention QuestBridge. QuestBridge is a program that targets primarily students from families with a family income less from up to $75,000 a year. So that is the general population that they're targeting. QuestBridge has a relationship with some of the most selective colleges and universities in the United States, and if you are accepted as a QuestBridge finalist, then you can apply to all of their partner schools, and the application fee is waived at all of their partner schools. But it's not just QuestBridge. Stamps. The Stamp Scholars Program is offered by some of the most preeminent colleges and universities in the United States, and is based on leadership. You can identify the entire group of schools. But again, if you give you an example. Caltech is one of the universities that has the Stamp Scholarship. Caltech is the #2 engineering program in the United States. It's MIT and it's Caltech. It's those two. Well, highly selective. If you're in the 9th grade and you identify, I want to go to Caltech, and the way I'm going to get a Caltech education paid for is I'm going to be a Stamp Scholar. Well, now you look at the Stamps application, and then you do all the things that are necessary so that when you apply as a high school senior, that you are highly competitive. If you're a high school senior now, you should have already identified the admissions cycle. And I've already pointed to the fact that early decision is binding. but early decision provides you with the best opportunity to get into a highly selective school. And I say this to the parents as a parent. Our oldest son, he's a graduate at Amherst College. When our oldest son was in high school, he had a 3.3 GPA, I think maybe a 25 on the ACT. Amherst is expecting a 4.0 GPA and a 32 on the ACT. So how does our son get accepted? Well, he got invited to the diversity weekend. He met people on campus. He was a 3-sport varsity athlete. His hook was visual arts. He was a brilliant artist, had a brilliant art portfolio, and he applied early decision. So what he said to Amherst College was, look, I'm all in. If you accept me, I'm coming. And by December 15th of his senior year, it was done. He applied to one college. He got accepted to one college that he wanted to attend, and everything else worked out from there. So again, engaging in this research now is critically important. And here's an example of the difference between regular decision admission rates and early decision admission rates. And it pretty much is the same for selective schools, is that if you apply early decision, that is your best chance of being offered admission. So a parent might ask me, say, well, Mr. Wynn, should my child apply early decision? It depends on your particular child. I'll give you an example. Last year, one of our students did not choose to apply early decision. It's because she was over the top, being recruited by everybody. She was a perfect 4.0 on a 4.0 scale. She had a 33 on the ACT. She had 4 years of high school leadership. She had taken every AP class offered in her high school curriculum. She had a 4 or a 5 on every AP exam. So she applied to Princeton regular decision, Amherst regular decision, Williams regular decision, Vanderbilt regular decision, Washington and Lee regular decision, Swarthmore regular decision, and Davidson. I don't know what it is about the state of North Carolina that you all have something against our children from Georgia. The only college she was not offered admission to was Davidson here in North Carolina. She was offered admission to Princeton and Williams and Amherst and Swarthmore, Washington Lee and Vanderbilt. But again, so she was in a position where she felt that she did not have to apply early decision because of her body of work. But here are what the admission cycles look like. And you can download this from the National Association of College Admission Council's website freely. It fully explains regular decision, early admissions, early action, early decision, restrictive early action. Some colleges have regular decision 1 and early decision 1 and early decision 2, early action 1 and early action 2. But again, you simply identify the admission cycle that you feel that you are best qualified to be offered admission. Here's what a high-quality self-presentation for a college looks like. So I'm just going to ask, by show of hands, for the students. I want you to be honest with me. I'm going to ask you questions about each of these. If you believe that you are an absolutely brilliant writer, raise your hand. Okay, if you have already received 2 absolutely brilliant letters of recommendation from teachers that you personally have read, and they are so good you can frame them and put them on a wall in your home, raise your hand. Okay, if you have a high-quality one-page resume that anyone who looks at it knows that you just walk on water. You are so brilliant in leadership and service and academics and your test scores. Raise your hand. Okay, I know I'm going to get one of them. If your transcript shows that you have taken the most rigorous classes offered in your high school, you've gotten an A in every class. If you have any AP classes, you've gotten a 5 on every AP exam. Raise your hand. Okay, I got one. All right. If you are a president or a captain if you are a president in at least 2 clubs, if you are a captain of a team in every sport that you play at the varsity level in high school, raise your hand. Okay, that was a cameraman. That wasn't a hand. Okay, if you have brilliant community service where the person where you have been serving, whether it is in a church or a YMCA or anywhere along town, will write you a 3-page letter recommendation attesting to your character, to your leadership, to the difference that you make, that you are the anointed one in Greensboro, North Carolina. Raise your hand. Okay. What I'm saying to you is I have worked with students who could raise their hand in every one of these categories. And what I'm saying to you is that's the competition. Now, if you can't be the great in every category, just choose the one where you want to be great and commit to it. Because if I ask the questions a different way, if I said, if you have played a video game and you are better than all of your friends, they're just afraid to play you, raise your hand. Here are the pieces that Brenda was talking about. Before you are offered an admission letter to a college, here are some of the many things that you are being assessed on. And if you know this on the front end, then you have an opportunity to change your presentation. It's the information that we believe is critical. If you know, then you can decide to do. Here's what we see oftentimes in essays. And I want all the parents to really understand this. This is not a slight on Guilford County schools because this is national. Nationally, young people are not coming out of our secondary schools as accomplished writers. Many of the word prompts for college applications are intentionally broken into 3 or more components. How did you do that? Why did you do that? What did you learn from that? What would you do differently? Most students that we work with will only answer the first prompt and they get lost in the details. If you can't do well in that writing assessment, we have a lot of students that won't even complete their applications to Wake Forest. Although Wake Forest is a test optional school with a generous need-based financial aid policy, we have students who cannot get past the Wake Forest writing prompts. They just throw their hands up and say, Mr. Wynn, I just don't know how. And no matter how we work with them, they simply refuse to move forward. To become an accomplished writer, you just have to write. And young people spend so much time texting with their thumbs in lowercase. You won't believe the number of essays that I read that the pronoun I is lowercase. And it's been lowercase for 4 years of high school, and no one's been correcting it. And then it winds up in a college admissions room. And then that student's denied admission almost outright. So, you know, all the little things matter. Application supplements. What I want to say to all of you who have developed gifts and talents, your parents should be developing your videos now, posting them to YouTube, and preparing a video library of you competing in your sport, of you performing music, of you and your artwork, of you in dancing. And I will also say this to parents, and I want to make sure that the parents are clear on this process. One of our students received a $25,000 Sallie Mae Bridging the Dream Scholarship last month based on a nomination that we made. Sallie Mae contacted our office, and the first question they asked me is they said, we couldn't find Damien's social media footprint. Does he have a Facebook page? Before they awarded the scholarship, they wanted to check out his background. And many colleges and universities are going to check out your social media footprint, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Snapchat. And so I want all the parents and the students to understand, and what I say to all the students that I work with, if you're embarrassed for me to be your friend on Facebook, then some of the colleges that you're thinking about, you should take them off your list. So, you know, all of these are important considerations when you're looking at this process. I want to just, let's see, I'm at 7 o'clock. I don't have time to really spend on Kyra's narrative. But I will show you, this is what a high quality resume looks like. The student who I mentioned who was offered admission to Princeton and Amherst and Williams and Swarthmore and Washington and Lee and Vanderbilt, this is her resume. But the resume didn't look like that as a 9th grader. She started high school with a vision of, what do I want my resume to look like when I began applying to college? What is it that I want my brand to be? I'm not an athlete, but I will do the marching band. I will make a commitment to academics, and then whatever programs and organizations I'm in, I will try to be an officer. president or treasurer. And so your resume should be sent to every college that you're interested in applying to as a supplement, or when you first introduce yourself to college. So one of the things that we do with the students that we work with, if we contact an admissions officer at one of these selective colleges, we send that admission officer all the resumes of the students that we're working with who we believe meet their standards as an introduction. And then we're able to provide 2 or 3 sentences about each student. I want to introduce Kimberly to you, because Kimberly is a brilliant student at one of the top performing high schools in Georgia. So again, your resume, I need you to just think about, what do you want it to look like? If you're an athlete, you should have an athletic resume that profiles you. So then as an athlete, and here's what Lanier did. She did not have a full scholarship offer on the table as a high school senior. But what she did was she created her athletic resume. She identified colleges and universities that had good volleyball programs that might need some more talent. And she marketed herself. She emailed her resume to all the coaches. And one of the coaches at Brunel University in Georgia gave her a call, called her down for a tryout, and then offered her an athletic scholarship and coupled with an academic scholarship. So the X factors, they really, as you're proceeding through high school, you need to be recognized. And what I want to say to the parents or the people who run programs or those of you who attend church, my wife and I are the education ministry leaders at our church, at Turner Chapel AME Church in Marietta, Georgia. As an education ministry leaders, what we have done is we have established a series of awards that we recognize our students with. They have a 3.0 GPA, they receive an academic medal. If they have the top GPA for their grade level, they're recognized with an Eagle Award. If they're performing leadership, they get a leadership award. All of these awards wind up on their resume when they begin applying to colleges and universities. If you're involved in any program, all that you need to do is go to the program, the coach, or go to the program supervisor, faculty advisor, and say, how can I be recognized for something? You know, one of our students was recognized as just being the most positive attitude on the team. You know, so again, you have to advocate for yourself, because you have to recognize when you're in the admissions room, how you want to compete with the other students who are in the room. 7:05, I don't have time to show that clip. Your recommendation also, your resume should guide your recommendation letters. This is critical. When you create your one-page resume, and then you approach a teacher for a recommendation letter, you hand the teacher your resume as you are requesting a recommendation letter. So the teacher has your resume on the table as he or she is writing your recommendation letter, and he or she is now able to reference your resume that fits 2 pieces together. So it's 7:05. I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to move over. If I stand right here, will you be able to videotape me? Questions. How many of you understand how complicated this process can be? Any of the young people get a sense of it? Okay, so is there anyone that has a question on how you want to compete? Your personal situation. Are there any young people who are thinking now, man, I need to start putting up? Any young people think that you may need to set some goals for yourself to become a better student? Anybody in the room, you're getting B's when you could get A's. So you're letting yourself be less competitive. There should be no one in this room, if an A is 90, and you have a grade of 85, then you need to become an advocate for yourself. You need to go to a teacher and say, how can I get that other 5 points? I need to get an A. You need to take ownership of that. And I want to say this particularly to the young men. Young men on basketball courts, they have swagger and they have attitude. When they go on a basketball court, they want to be better than the guy in front of them. They want to do better than the guy in front of them. But so often they go into a classroom and they go to the back of the room. Well, when that teacher has to write a recommendation or that teacher does an evaluation, he or she is not seeing you as an outstanding student. He or she is seeing you at the back of the room. What I want you to understand is that the way this works, you need to be exceptional in everything. Now, many of you will say, Mr. Wynn, I can't be exceptional in everything. Maybe not, but it should not be because you didn't even try. So you should go to school with an attitude to be exceptional. Now, for the parents who would say, oh, Mr. Wynn, that's going to put too much stress on my child. Let me ask you something. How much are you willing to go into debt? There are parents who are $90,000 in debt because their kids started school, the wrong school, transferred to another school, lost a year, had to start over, or they wind up at the wrong school, didn't finish their degree at all. What I'm saying to all of us is this has to be a team. That means, and the only way that you can be on a good team, you got to have good coaching. So I would say this to the students. If you write an essay, you probably don't want your parent critiquing it. Because parents don't want to hurt your feelings, typically, particularly moms. Moms don't want to hurt your feelings. You need to go find someone who is going to rip it apart. And I'll tell you this, I'm telling you, after 30 years, most of the essays that I need a student to write a 1,000-word essay so I can find one paragraph of good material. And if they can give me 1,000 words and I can take everything out and start out with this, you gave me a good opening. Let's just work with that. I also want to tell you this. When you apply to college, that is not the time to hide your dirty laundry. When you apply to college, you need to speak to your issues. Colleges want to know, how did you overcome? Look, I'm telling you, I wish someone had told me this. I was adopted. I never mentioned that when I applied to Northeastern. I grew up poor in Chicago. I never mentioned that. I attended one of the lowest performing public high schools in the country. I didn't mention it, but they knew it. I had all sorts of issues dealing with gang violence in Chicago. I was expelled from one high school. I had all these issues that never wound up into my essays. And it was only by God's grace that I wound up at Northeastern. And it's something now when I reflect back on it, because you need the average ACT score to be accepted to Northeastern is 32. And when I graduated from high school in Chicago, I may have had a 24, maybe. But even if I had a 24, the average ACT score at my public high school would have been a 12. So I would have been twice the norm at the high school. So they must have seen in me grit or determination. And what I'm saying to you is that there are all sorts of scholarship opportunities and college opportunities. We're nominating some students now for the Torch Scholars Program at Northeastern. They receive about 500 nominations annually for 5 full scholarships. Full. These are 5 full scholarships that pay everything, books, fees, transportation, everything. But they're offered primarily to first-generation students and students from high poverty backgrounds. But what they really want, they want students who have overcome something. So what I'm saying to you is that I need you to really look within. What have you struggled with? What are you overcoming? And when I look at our students, we have students with who are ADD, ADHD, students who have been in special ed. We have one student who was in special ed throughout school until 10th grade and then moved from special ed to gifted in 10th grade. She had that whole story about her misdiagnosis throughout school. We have children who have been homeless, helpless, have had a parent killed violently. So what I'm saying to you is look at who you are and look at what you've overcome and make yourself a top student. Those of you who are there any high school seniors who are here tonight? Okay, good. Because that means all of you have time. All of you have time to get your collective stuff together. So let me see a show of hands from the young people. How many of you, now that you've heard me speak, you will start school when school opens again, willing to work harder? Raise your hand. There you go. How many of you are willing to acknowledge right now that you have been lazy, a little lazy snot? Very good. Very good. Oh, what about this one? How many of you are willing to admit or to acknowledge you've been hanging out with the wrong people, a bunch of other little lazy snots? Okay, you all don't want to admit that. Just one. Let me tell you what happens. If you want to be a top student, the best way, and this is research. John Holt wrote a book called How Children Learn. In that book, he said, students who are great students, who you think they hang out with? Other great students. And you know why? Because what they do is they see what great students do. They see how great students take notes. They see how great students raise questions. This is not the time to draw racial lines. If you want to be a great student, whether that student is Asian, Caucasian, African American, African, Haitian, it doesn't matter. You need to identify who are the great students. That's what I'm going to start spending more time with. I'm not telling you to give up your friends, because if you hang out with a great student, you can go back and help your friend who is not. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can help your friend who's not a great student. Also, guys, you have to stop being embarrassed for being brilliant. Guys try to hide. I know I'm guilty. I was an athlete in high school, and I hung out with all the football players. And I tried to act dumb like most of them behaved in class. I started a chemistry class as an A student. All the football players sat in the back, and they talked about me. Then eventually, as the semester went on, I moved my seat to a few rows from the front, closer to the back. I became a B student. That wasn't enough. They talked about me in practice, and I moved my seat from being a B to being a C student. By the end of the term, I was an F student with them. And you know what they were doing? They were celebrating everybody that failed the class. That is insanity. That is insanity. That admissions room, you're not going to get any props for being a dummy. So when you're in that admissions room, they want to see you were an F student and you became an A student. Not that you went the opposite direction. Can you remember what happened when they said this one student was an inside the box type of student? How many of you want to admit her? Nobody. You know, what they're looking for a student that is exceptional, outside the box, thinks differently, does things differently. I think that if you all take all the information you received over the course of all of these sessions, you will be able to really begin to construct a great plan. And if you have a great plan, that plan has to be for you, not for someone else. So whatever your gifts and talents are, they have to be for you. But of all the things I've said tonight, I need you to understand this. You are going to be compared to students from your demographic group. If you are Asian and you are a brilliant Asian student, it's unfair, but you're going to be compared against all the other brilliant Asian students who are in the pool of applicants for college or university. If you're a Caucasian student, and you may say, oh man, it's unfair that other students, you know, this is a myth. A lot of white students think, oh, these other people, they get a slot that I should have gotten. You realize that most of the colleges and universities you look at, they're 70 to 80% white. That means that that's the dominant group on that particular campus. So you should never say, oh, someone else got my spot. Understand who you are, and you're comparing yourself to students in that group. It's just the way it is. And if you're African American, let me say this as a parent of two African American young men. My wife and I were relentless. We made grades our household priority, and it paid off. Our youngest son is a Gates Millennium Scholar who started his college career at Morehouse College. Our oldest son, Amherst College, with a generous financial aid package. But I'll tell you what happened in high school. I got a call from our son's high school coach. And he said, Mr. Wynn, Michael was in, and he was complaining about his course schedule. And I said, what do you mean? He said it's too hard, because he was in AP Physics and AP Calculus. And he said it's interfering with football. And as God is my witness, here's what I said to the coach. I'm sorry, coach. I'll take him off the football team. Do you realize that when my coach told my son that at practice, my son came home that day and said, Dad, I'm sorry the coach called you. Don't worry about it. It's all good. You got to get your priorities in line, and you got to focus. And so for parents, you got to recognize this is a team sport. You need some teachers on your team. You need some counselors on your team. And you need to build strong relationships with the community. I thank you all so much.